Hello, I'm Judge Michael Scionti. I preside over the Veterans Treatment Court, and you're watching Tampa Bay Community Network.
Hi, I am Bill Hodges, and you're going to enjoy this program. Well, I don't know whether enjoy is a good term. I have Judge Michael Scionti on the program with me today, and he holds so many titles, I'm not even going to through them. But today we're going to talk about something that's unique and different, and I hope is making a big difference, the Veterans Court. Judge, so happy to have you on the program.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for inviting me.
I rarely have somebody on the program who is so well qualified for the job that they're taking. I have a lot of people who were politicians and they come on the air and maybe their background is in this, that, or another thing, and they won an election. But your particular background to be on this Veterans Court and to head it up is unique in the background that you have, because once upon a time, I had Judge Scionti sitting across from me as a state representative. And then all of a sudden, they saw him in Washington and said, I want this man up here. And he came back to us unscathed, which is kind of a good come out of Washington. Judge, let's talk about your background a little bit. How do you know the military so well?
Well, I'm still serving. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army Reserve. I'm now in my 18th year of service. I'm currently assigned to Special Operations Command here at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida. I work in the Judge Advocate General's section. As a Judge Advocate, I've served multiple tours of duty in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Throughout that service, supporting rule of law, supporting our troops in combat, out of combat, supporting their families. I think that in and of itself gives me a unique perspective in providing assistance, or at least leading the team in the Veterans Treatment Court that provides the assistance for our veterans who have served honorably for our nation. So.
I think you also had something to do with Abu Ghraib. Our people have heard those names. Of course, Afghanistan they know. But you did something with Abu Ghraib also, did you not?
Well, as a Judge Advocate, I served in 2003 with the 3rd Infantry Division. It was during the initial push of U.S. forces into Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. And it was in that capacity that Judge Advocates, who are legal advisors to our military commanders, and at that time in 2003, when the legal branch of our military were asked to provide guidance on how to conduct detention operations, war crimes, war tribunals. That was one of the many roles that Judge Advocate served in support of our military, as well as the coalition forces at that time. So in that capacity, I presided over war tribunals and detention hearings, and they were occurring at Camp Cropper, at Baghdad International Airport for a period of time, and then that moved over to Abu Ghraib, which was also known as the Coalition Provisional Authority's detention facility. And as your audience would recall, way back in 2004, there was some detention abuse that arose from activities of U.S. forces.
Yeah, to me it's such a shame. I don't know, and I won't justify any kind of abuse of any prisoner. I just won't do that. But because I can't justify it doesn't mean I can't understand how some of these young people who've watched their friends have their legs blown off by an IUD or somebody with a jacket bomber or something of that nature react in these kind of matters. And I assume somebody like yourself who's been there, done that, been in the middle of it, would have some compassion for these people coming in front of you in today's world.
Well, as a judge advocate at that time, I was presiding over these tribunals, I, along with a team of other U.S. service members. And we support the rule of law in our
you have
efforts.
to.
Absolutely, and that was part of our mission to establish stability, security, and good governance in Iraq, as we are doing in many different parts of the world. Part of that good governance is ensure the rule of law. So as a military magistrate, ensuring that these detainees were entitled to their Geneva Convention and Hague Convention entitlements was primary. And our commanders who were leading the efforts trying to ensure troop safety made sure that we were doing our jobs correctly and we were ensuring that they were following the law. So,
Is a suicide bomber protected under the Geneva Convention?
well, it depends on his legal status. And so these status determinations are what we as judge advocates were making recommendations for the commanding generals at that time. Early on in Operation Iraqi Freedom, when the U.S. military were capturing Iraqi Republican Guard and Fedayeen forces, the Iraqi Special Force troops, they were fighting in uniform, following chain of command, bearing open arms, and there were certain arguments that could be made that they were entitled to the Geneva Convention protections of enemy prisoner of war status. And we were making those recommendations after a tribunal of whether or not these particular individuals were entitled to those protections. If, as you pointed out, a suicide bomber was not fighting consistent with the Geneva Conventions, wasn't in uniform, wasn't following a chain of command, wasn't openly bearing arms, well, then it was up to the tribunal to make the determination and recommendation as to whether or not they were enemy combatants and not enemy prisoners of war.
We send many of these people over for 6 and 7 tours. And I'm talking about the people today, but as you pointed out to me before we began the broadcast, there's an awful lot of Vietnam vets that are still hurting bad as a result of that war.
Well, our nation in the last 50 years, whether it's from the Vietnam era conflict or the Korean conflict before that, through operations in the Gulf War and enduring freedom and Iraqi freedom, there are a lot of demands that have been placed on our military forces that are quite capable of meeting those demands, as well as the families that are there to support those troops, those men and women in arms. But it does take a toll, and no one serves in a deployed combat environment without bringing home a little bit of baggage.
I guess.
Yeah, and so the way that I and fellow service members were received when I returned home from Iraq and Afghanistan was quite different than my brothers and sisters in arms that served in Vietnam.
I was spit on, literally spit on in the street of Dayton, Ohio, because I was in uniform during that time.
Well, Bill, let me personally thank you. It was an era before my time, but I don't lose the opportunity when it's presented to me to thank those who were serving our country in that time, because as grateful as I am to continue to serve our nation in uniform, I'm mindful of how I was received, how well I was received when I returned home from my multiple tours, and also mindful that you and others were not received with the same sense of honor and respect. And so I want to thank you and welcome you home. I do it in my courtroom. Whenever a Vietnam era vet or a Korean War era vet comes before me. And I have probably about anywhere from 15 to 20 veterans who are currently in the Veterans Treatment Court that have served in the Vietnam conflict. So it's very special.
Let's talk about the Veterans Treatment Court. How would you define that? How is that different than any other court?
It's a great question. So in Hillsborough County, 13th Judicial Circuit, we have what's referred to as the Veterans Treatment Court. It's a combination of rehabilitation and treatment. It brings to bear the three, what I think are the three most important concepts in any treatment court. And that is, it's a drug treatment court, it's a mental health court, and it's a diversionary court. And all three of those components come to bear in Veterans Treatment Court. It's through the legislative support that the laws were passed. The governor signed off on those in 2014. the 13th Judicial Circuit was able to establish the Veterans Treatment Court. And it was through the efforts of a colleague of mine, Judge Richard Weiss, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army, and a good friend of his, retired Colonel D.J. Reyes, United States Army. The two of them together initiated the Veterans Treatment Court here in Hillsborough County at a time when only misdemeanor offenses were eligible. So in time, the legislature passed laws to expand the focus and scope of that law. And in 2015, it included felony offenses. And Judge Holder, a good friend and colleague, and also a retired colonel in the United States Air Force, assumed those joint responsibilities of now a misdemeanor and felony diversionary mental health and drug treatment court. And I've had the good fortune of carrying the torch after Judge Weiss and Judge Holder to now preside. It's been over a year I've been presiding over that drug treatment court. And if I may, under Judge Weiss and Colonel Reyes, there were approximately 20 veterans that were being served. The court met on virtually no budget with one meeting a month. Under Judge Holder, the population grew to about 100 veterans, a little bit more than 100 veterans, and the court met once every 2 weeks. Now, we have one of the largest veteran treatment courts in the country. We have over 220 veterans at any given time. We meet once a week, and our mentor program, which Colonel Reyes initiated, has been able to expand to now over 100 mentors. Mentors are volunteer. Great. It's wonderful. They are the backbone of the Veterans Treatment Court system.
So what does a mentor do?
It's a great question. So mentors are not lawyers. They're not the lawyers for the veteran. They're not counselors for the veterans. They're their battle buddies. They're there to provide support, guidance, some structure. I think the lessons learned over analysis of other veterans treatment courts across the country have been able to demonstrate that veterans do better when there is structure. Veteran defendants do better when there is structure.
Well, we all had it.
We all had it in the military.
And I think that's what a lot of society is missing.
Well, and that's exactly correct. It's what these veterans once were accustomed to and now are no longer experiencing. So having a mentor there by his or her side to guide them through the process, be there as a friend, be there as a sense of support, as a reminder of court dates, as a reminder of therapy, is critical. And Colonel Reyes is to be credited for his leading this effort.
Who are these mentors?
These mentors are all...
Are they people who have been in combat themselves, ex-military, not military, mental health professionals? Who are they? Or maybe a mixture of them all?
The Veterans Treatment Court Mentor Corps is made up of fellow veterans who have either served in combat or not, who have served honorably or continue to serve in uniform honorably. There's a vetting process that takes place. There's also a very extensive training process that's been implemented. I would add that not every Veterans Treatment Court is lucky enough to have a mentor program. We here have a very robust and arguably one of the best in the country. But not every state has a Veterans Treatment Court, and not every judicial circuit here in the state of Florida has a Veterans Treatment Court. So
is this kind of a pioneer?
Well, it's been around for several years, started in Buffalo, New York, at the vision of one of the county court judges, and it has since spread not only through the other states, through state courts, but now into the federal court system. We're very proud of what we've been able to establish here. I'm certainly very proud of the entire team of professionals, the commitment that our public defender, Ms. Julianne Holt, and our state attorney.
She's a nice lady. I like her and very dedicated.
She is. She's a wonderful public official, and she represents the community so well. She has dedicated her efforts, her staff, to support this effort. So has our state attorney, Mr. Andrew Warren, and before him, Mr. Mark Ober. Both offices have been extremely supportive of this effort. They've embraced it. They've dedicated their best and brightest to assist as part of the team of professionals that make up the Veterans Treatment Court. So I just preside over this wonderful team. The VA, the Veterans Administration, have caseworkers that provide great insight and constant supervision of these veterans, as well as the court's own staff. So I'm just blessed to be able to work with such an incredible assembly of professionals that are truly focused on these veterans.
I am constantly amazed at what the VA can provide. But it's like an onion. You keep peeling it off and say, oh, there's another shiny part. No, there's another one. It's amazing to me what the VA will give to you if you go in and ask for it.
Yes. Well, I've been very impressed with the VA, especially their staff. They've been dedicated to this mission for many years. They've expanded that dedication here in Hillsborough County to more staff. I think it's representative of the increased veterans that we have that we're trying to assist. I think it's one of the few courts in the 13th Judicial Circuit where increasing the caseload is a good thing. With the more veterans that appear on our docket, that means to me and to our team, we're able to reach out and affect those lives, improve those lives, get these veterans the treatment, counseling that they need so that they can have a brighter future for tomorrow.
I think we have roughly 69,000 vets here in Hillsborough County.
It wouldn't surprise me. This is
The #1 county in the state for veterans.
And I would argue probably in the top 5, if not top 3 in the nation.
We're third in the country behind, actually state-wise, California, Texas, and us.
Well,
And it's maybe 100,000 difference.
Well, born and raised here in Tampa, coming from a family of military veterans, it was an honor for me to serve, but to serve with so many folks that call Tampa home. And whether it's through the retirement community of veterans, through our active and reserve components that serve here and call Tampa home, with 2 major VA presence with the James A. Haley and Bay Pines. This is a community that lives and breathes military life, and that's why I think it was so important to establish a VA or a Veterans Court here in Hillsborough County. So
our new VA had Joe Battle. He's not really new anymore. He's been here for a while. But it was a breath of fresh air when he walked through the door. The man is truly committed to veterans.
yeah, and leadership is what many of these departments need, and glad to see that the VA has good leadership because change comes from the top and works its way on down. And just like in the Veterans Treatment Court, Judge Weiss provided outstanding leadership, working closely with Colonel Reyes and Judge Holder, who's a personal friend. In fact, I would say he's my mentor.
There you go.
18 years ago.
Can't make it without mentors.
No, and 18 years ago, it was Judge Holder who swore me in as
really?
a young officer, as a young lieutenant, when I was a prosecutor here locally when I decided to join the Army. So it's very special.
What a nice history.
It is, and he's such an incredible presence, and for me personally as a friend and as a colleague and as a mentor, and to be able to carry on the good work that he and Judge Weiss and others have done in the Veterans Treatment Court is really an honor.
How do veterans get into this program? How do they get diverted? Is it some kind of automatic process where they say, you're a veteran, so obviously you need to come over here? Or does their attorney have to do this? Or how does it happen?
Bill, that's a great question. And in fact, it's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful that you invited me to be on your show today. Disseminating that information out to the community is an ongoing effort. So veterans who are eligible for entry, they won't know it. Their attorneys will not know that they're veterans unless there's a dialogue that's taking place. Either veterans have learned about the VA, the VTC through the VA or through word of mouth, or their attorneys will advise and ask very important questions upon arrest or upon their first contact.
By the way, VTC, Veterans
Veterans Treatment Court.
Treatment Court.
Yes.
Just so sometimes
Yes, so,
we slip into those quick things.
And as an Army officer, I fall victim to it as well. So
acronyms, we love them, don't we?
Yes, for your listeners, Veterans Treatment Court, we refer to as VTC.
VTC.
So
now we can keep doing it.
Sure. So how do veterans get into this program? Well, first, they have to be honorably serving or have honorably served And that means their discharge from any branch of service was with an honorable discharge or a general discharge under honorable conditions. They have to have committed an offense that would have made them eligible for entry into the Veterans Treatment Court program.
And the range of offenses there would give a little one all the way up to whatever you think is the...
Felonies, yeah, even first-degree felonies are eligible. The statute outlines what offenses are, and it's a pretty broad list of criminal offenses that are eligible, and certainly misdemeanors as well. Majority of the offenses that we see in Veterans Treatment Court are misdemeanor in nature, but it doesn't have to be a first-time offense either. That's the component of the diversionary program. Whether it's a first-time offense or not, if you successfully complete the program, then one of the benefits could be that your criminal charge would be dismissed.
Okay.
But
there are people out there who see vets doing something, especially wives, or husbands for that matter, because we have a lot of female vets also. And they don't want to say anything because they don't want to get their vet in trouble. Knowing that there's some place like this that can look at it from that standpoint would seem to me to be something would help them be able to say, hey, look, I saw something, I don't know what, maybe we ought to look at it.
Well, the VTC, Veterans Treatment Court, is a problem-solving court, and we're real proud of it. Everybody in the 13th Circuit is, and I think everybody statewide should be. We have set really the standard bearer here in Hillsborough County for what we think is a well-functioning and effective problem-solving court for all of our veterans, men and women, homelessness, mental health, substance abuse, alcohol abuse disorder. We deal with those issues in Veterans Treatment Court. We come up with treatment plans. The clinicians, the medical providers, the social workers, the legal team on both sides of that aisle work as a team, as a collaborative team to develop a treatment plan suitable for each individual veteran, and with the assistance of the mentor to help guide that veteran through the process, and with the oversight that the court provides, we hope to get this veteran back onto a road to recovery, and in the same process have their charge dismissed. You had asked an earlier question about the qualifications, how does one get into the Veterans Treatment Court? And a really key component of that is there's a service-related connection to their service and the criminal charge they've received. So the court conducts a colloquy with question and answer with the veteran to find out what experience, what occurred during your military service that would have led to or contributed to either the substance use and abuse, the alcohol use and abuse, or the mental health, whether it's post-traumatic stress, whether it's traumatic brain injury, whether it's even military sexual trauma. We see it all in Veterans Treatment Court. But it's
so you're looking for a service-connected disability.
Service-related condition. Okay. Unlike service-connected for disability, okay, the legislature has carved out the language of service-related condition, okay, or experience. And so that's what the court must determine as to whether or not there's a service-related
So if I get into a road rage situation, you would be looking at it to see whether or not that rage was really pent-up PTSD.
Exactly. And if you've used medication or alcohol to subdue those feelings of anger and rage, or if you're having nightmares from your prior experience and only alcohol or drugs, you find a way of satisfying that, then that's what we're looking for. We're looking for those veterans who are experiencing those difficulties so that the Veterans Treatment Court can provide them with a new life toward recovery.
You talked about completing the program. What would be a average program? Maybe there is no average program because there are no two people that are exactly the same. But when we're going to complete a program, what would be part of it?
Well,
or the parts of it, for that matter.
So the program can be as short as 9 months, could be as long as 3 years. It just depends on a number of factors. One is the nature of the charge itself, whether it's a misdemeanor where the court has jurisdiction for 1 year or less, or a felony where the court would have jurisdiction for upwards of 5 years or more. It just depends on the degree of the felony. Then it depends on the risk assessments for each individual veteran. Risk as in not their risk to reoffend in the community, but the risks to themselves of their drug use, their mental health conditions. So conducting evaluations of each veteran, developing a treatment plan for that veteran, and then working that veteran through a phased program, a 5-phased program that focuses on rehabilitation, treatment, recovery, and sustainability of a lifestyle. So not only is it the mental health conditions co-occurring, mental health and substance possibly, but also family life, housing, employment, factors that can lead to their second and third order effects of a mental condition or a substance abuse circumstance that lead to instability and hopelessness, and then that could feed continued drug use and mental health problems.
Not all veterans have access to the VA. In fact, there's some gaping holes that are really difficult. It's a rat's nest. You need to call the VA if you wonder and see whether you are. Give them all your particulars. But not all will get into the VA. Who pays for all this treatment? Where do they get the treatment?
Of the services provided through the VTC is through the VA.
Okay.
Most of our veterans are eligible. If they're not
Okay.
eligible by sheer time and service, they're eligible for
By
a
establishing the PTSD?
well, yes, and by their service to our nation and honorable discharge. In order to be eligible for VA services, not only do you have to have a certain length of service, but you also have to have an honorable service to our nation. So it could be a
And there's
general.
even an income requirement.
Yeah, there may be. So VA provides those primary services. We are the beneficiaries of state and federal grant money, not directly to the court in particular, but some of the monies that the court does receive, it's worked through some of our local partners like DACO, ACTS, Tampa Crossroads, and organizations that are very familiar with not only substance and alcohol abuse, but co-occurring North Tampa Behavioral Health, Riverside Recovery. These are our community partners that work with the VTC. They work with the VA to provide these services. But
So you will get them the help.
we will. We will find.
One way or another, they're going to get the help.
We will find them the help, whether it's through the VA or whether it's reaching out to our community partners. And the VA has been wonderful in assisting, trying to crack that code, so to speak. You mentioned a rat's nest. Well, we have outstanding staff that are in court with us every time from the VA that help individual veterans
Good.
navigate that program.
Thomas Hines down at the VA here at Haley is just super. He's an enrollment counselor, and he really will help you. You go in there, get him, and he'll figure it out for you one way or another, what your eligibility is.
Yeah, if I may, I don't know what the community's perception is of the VA, but I can tell you firsthand in my own personal dealings with the VA, as well as the presiding judge over the Veterans Treatment Court, they're a group of wonderful professionals, truly dedicated to their veterans, very responsive, and I couldn't be more proud of the services our veterans are receiving through the VA.
I'll second every word he just said. Judge Scionti, it is so good to have you on, and I've got more questions. Would you come back?
I would be delighted to. Thank
And I'd
you,
always
Bill.
love to have you on my radio show, Veterans Corner.
I'd be honored.
Have you there. Folks, you're unique, you're special, and you're great. Tell yourself so often because you are, you know. And I'm Bill Hodges. We'll see you on the next Spotlight on Government.